Evolutionary Hardcore 2.0, episode 71, coming your way. Today we're going to do the best summer cut with Beligas Pharma. And this is going to be an exciting one because Mobster and we're going to talk about summer cutting popularity over the years. We're going to talk about how things have changed. Back in Mobster's day in Britain, I'll talk about how it's changed in America over the years, how we're chasing being lean nowadays in America. People, how people, they go get gym memberships because 90% of them get gym memberships. Why? It's because they want to get lean. Very few in America nowadays get gym memberships because, I want to get big. You don't hear that very much. Next, we're going to talk about training strategies and then diet strategies for summer cutting, because that's important, because if you don't have your training and diet on point, you're not going to cut. We're also going to talk about our favorite Beligas cutting options and stacks, of course. We're going to spend most of the show talking about that. So that's going to be exciting. Make sure you bring your lunch for that one, because that's going to be a fun topic.
It's a lot.
And then we're gonna talk about Beligas, more about Beligas, and this is a new brand that we just started talking about on this podcast. But they are an excellent brand, and we're gonna tell you why they're so popular and why their popularity is growing. So let's first get into summer cut popularity over the years, Mobster. And look, Mobster, you've been around a while. You're a boomer. How has summer cutting changed over the years in Britain?
Well, if we were talking about the general population, Steve, I'm thinking back in my mother's day. Obviously, I'm old enough to remember. And my mum would have been a typical example. Women were way more concerned with than men with getting in shape. And there's a certain irony, right, in terms of the modern approach to these things, because I think we said in one show previously, and I've actually seen a few memes of this on Facebook, and it's pictures of people from the 1950s, 1960s on the beach. And you're hard pushed to find someone who's seriously out of shape in that photograph. And then you have a picture of a modern day beach now. And typically, Steve, they haven't gone out of their way to find a beach where only obese people have gone. This is just a normal beach. It's something that we were familiar with, comfortable with, what we've seen for ourselves. And there's a lot more people out of shape. Right? So the historical thing was it would have been a woman focused, female focused. I need to get into shape because I'm going to be wearing my bikini. I'm going to be wearing my bathing outfit, whatever. And, women buying clothes for their holidays and all this kind of stuff, and making sure that I'm in shape because people are going to see me by the pool, this kind of thing. And yet now it's more diverse. It's way more 50-50. Men are just as concerned as women. There's a couple of reasons for this. Steve and I have talked about multiple shows what some people describe as the obesity epidemic, which basically means a lot more of us are out of shape than ever before. And yet at the same time, we're way more pressured, and I use that word loosely, to get into shape because of what we see in the media, because of what we've seen in perfume and holiday adverts and whatever else, because of what we see on the TV and in films and in movies. So it's changed in that particular way. Something else as well, Steve, and this is just from us, people that lift and train and whatever else. And that will be, of course, the majority of our listeners. And that is that we are psychically, Steve, probably less hardcore in terms of that part of the business being a big percentage, which it would have been back in the day, but way more general population, as I said earlier on. So there's a lot more average Joes with the obesity epidemic as part of that, training or considering training and getting into shape. So there are, again, just in PED access, as I've said on other shows, way more access, more options than you've ever had. And Beligas have got so many options. It's almost too many. Certainly anything you could possibly want, dosage-wise. But also the gyms. Within a relatively short distance of me, I don't drive, Steve, as you know, but if I did drive, I would say within 15 or 20 minutes drive, even here in the South Wales valleys, there's 10 options, 15 options of places I can go and train and get in shape. Back in the day, it would have been less. You would have had maybe 3 or 4 in a town of the size that I live in. And some of these would have been back street, slow, quote unquote, hardcore places. Maybe only one of them was a proper gym and more fitness orientated. Those will become way bigger business. How many personal trainers do we have access to? How many online apps and coaching online do we have access to? So it's arguably, Steve, in terms of just the supplement, training, PEDs, everything, the industry financially is as big even allowing for the differences in inflation or whatever else it's ever been. And so I would absolutely say, especially for our younger listeners, the need, the want, the desire to get into shape, whether it's for spring break, whether it's for your annual holiday, whether it's for a weekend away, whether it's for a wedding or whatever else, is as big as it's ever been. And when you've got companies like Beligas offering options just on the PED side, training advice online, influencers, inspiration from Instagram and from Facebook and from YouTube videos, you literally never had the access that in all of those attributes, all of those aspects, than you've ever had to this point in the industry. The only one you've lost, maybe I'll say two actually, would be the DVDs and the magazines / books that I, of course, have got here in my collection. That side of it's completely shrunk. But for example, just for the podcast that Steve and I do, we're talking about show number 70 odd for this particular one. On one of the other podcasts we do, we're way in excess of 600. And that's not unusual in this industry. And again, we're putting out the kind of information that actually works and is useful for listeners versus entertainment or talking about who's had a punch up in the gym or whatever else. So we're going to try and give you some good information on some dieting options and suggestions, training options and suggestions, little things that you can do to keep it interesting and varied. And then obviously, as Steve said, we'll get in specifically just there's so many options. We're not even going to try and cover every single option Beligas has. You really need to go and check them out and see just what they've got. But we will select a few and we'll give you some suggestions of stuff that we know that works and cutting stacks that have been popular for a very long time, but how to get the best from those stacks as well. Yeah, back to you, Steve.
Yeah, so popularity, summer cut popularity over the years has changed. I know for me, I've taken the view, and I talked about this on the forum all day. I want to look good year round. And I think a big transition in America that we've seen, Mobster, is, years ago, most of the population was in the Northeast. That's where, the European settlers moved to. And then what happened was over time, a lot of people have both immigrated from Central and South America into Texas and Florida and California. You've also had a lot of people relocate to the South for the weather. And they've relocated to California, Texas, Florida, a lot of the southern states, North Carolina, Georgia, Atlanta has boomed.
I've been to Georgia, Steve, on one of my competitions. Crazy fucking hot, man. Really, really. Almost like burning your skin sitting on anything hot. It was a very short visit. Yeah.
So my point is that it's not like it used to be where, half the year you were in a sweater. So you've got to look good. But the ironic thing is the South, the deep South, the people are in the worst shape. The people are lazy. They eat crap. We talk about the fried foods. That's typical of the South. But it's not just the fried foods. It's the garbage food, the boxed food, the processed foods. So what happens is people look like shit. So my view is, and a lot of people have adopted this as well these days, is you want to look good year round. Enough of this. I want to bulk up during the winter. I want to cut during the summer.
Which historically that was the case. Both sides of the ocean, Steve, as you say, we were covered up.
Yeah. So let me finish. Let me finish my point. So here's the thing. When it comes to competitions, things have changed in America. 60s and 70s, the golden era. You had guys like Frank Zane, like Arnold, whatever. They would bulk up going into their competition because they were already lean. They didn't have to lean up. Nowadays, you see guys bulk, and then before their competition, they lean out. So a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today that Beligas has available are things that will help you lean out, whether you want to go to the beach, whether you want to look good for the summer, whether you want to compete, whatever, or you're just an average Joe and you want to look good year round. So this is going to be that's the way things work. Now, what changed from the 60s and 70s till now, obviously it's the additives in the food. It's just we tend to eat. A lot of us, you have a bad day, whatever, you tend to eat or you tend to drink or you tend to do whatever to kind of, that's just the way we've kind of developed over the generations where we view food as a luxury, as a treat, like, I come home, I'm tired from work, I had a bad day, let me just order in pizza or something. So that doesn't obviously help the situation as well. And you can go up and down the street and look at the recycle bins of people, and you can see the same neighbors year week in and week out. They've got 2-3 boxes of pizza in their recycle bin. That means that week they had pizza 2 or 3 times a week, or they had, they ate out, whatever. Uber Eats coming into the neighborhood and whatever. So fast food and delivered food and all that stuff, and that's really made it very, very hard to cut. So why do people in America nowadays, Mobster, join gyms in general? Especially these franchise gyms like the Planet Fitness, the LA Fitness. Why do they join these gyms? 90 to 95% of them join the gym, not because, I want to get bigger and bulk up, but
That's
I
true.
want to get in shape. I want to lose weight.
Yes.
So
Yes.
summer
Yes.
cutting is very, very important. And we play that game every year where people want to go into the summer and they want to cut versus let's just focus on staying cut year round. So that's my advice when it comes to summer cutting, Mobster. And actually goes into our next strategy is when it comes to training is stay in shape year round, because it'll be a hell of a lot
Yes.
easier
Yes.
to look good for summer. So transition into training strategies.
Yeah, let me touch on that as well, Steve. I actually made a note of that while you was talking, and I said, don't get too far out of shape. Listen, right? Like Steve says with the historical stuff, people used to get 30, 40 pounds bulks, which was essentially fat and water. And the reality of the situation is that, especially amongst those that make a living from the sport, they don't get too far out of shape. 10, 15 pounds. They're still bulks. They still look huge, muscular, strong, etc., but they don't. I mean, the key thing here is you're just going to make more hard work for yourself. So that's number one. So let's get into the training specifically. And I'm going to touch upon some cardio options rather than weight options, but I will touch on the weight stuff as well. So I'll start with the cardio stuff. As an example, if you said to me, Steve, and especially my body weight, oh, we're just going to jog, I'd probably be fucked. And I don't just mean because I'm out of shape in terms of my cardiovascular running around. I would need time to get up to a certain level, etc., etc. I just simply mean the impact on my joints would be painful. Me jogging around at 300 plus pounds is going to hurt my knees, is going to hurt my ankles, and so on and so forth. And that's regardless if I run on grass, run on the beach, have good shoes, etc., etc. So one of the things I say to people is do something you can do all the time, or, which is probably more of a tip, Steve, rotate through cardio options. So one time you do cardio, it could be rowing, another time it could be the cross trainer, another time it could be the ergometer, another time it could literally be a running machine. You can have one of those running machines where it's kind of sculpted into a certain particular shape. You've got the, forget what it's called, but you've got a version, the Jacob's ladder, which is literally where you are kind of climbing up this ladder consistently, or like a conveyor belt type situation. You've got the Step Master, which is absolutely brutal, but a great one for professional bodybuilders to bring their glutes in and have those big lines in their glutes to show you that they're in condition. It's horrendous. It literally looks like something they used to have in the workhouses over here, Steve. And I can show you archaic historical photographs, and yet it does what it's supposed to do. But the great advantage of these options, my local gym, Steve, I think has 3 running machines, one of those heavy kind of bikes, cross trainer and something else. So they've got 4 or 5 options, and that's actually a relatively small cardio area compared to, say, for example, a fitness gym or a gym that's aimed at the average Joe. So they've still got 4 or 5 options just there. And you literally don't need to do the same goddamn thing every time. Or you could do a month on something, 4 weeks, and then swap to something else for 4 weeks. So long as you keep a sort of a log or a diary that helps you, and we're getting to that as well, which helps you keep a track of where you are. There's an irony also when it comes to cardio, and this is more of a bugbear than anything else. I walk to the gym, Steve, and then I walk to the shops, and then I go home, and then I record a show with Steve on a podcast. What I'm not doing is driving to the gym in order to get on something where I'm going to walk for half an hour. I could have fucking done that instead of driving. So Steve and I talk about these things. It's not always an option. It completely depends where you live. But if you live slightly outside the bigger cities, there's typically somewhere locally where you can go for a walk. And trust me, it is not the same, probably more effective overall, Steve, as going onto a running machine and walking for half an hour, because the ground will vary, especially if you're trail walking up a mountain and so on. Now, training. Let's focus on training for a second here. So there's your cardio suggestions. Right. Okay. So you're combining cardio with diet, which we'll get into, and this is a way of you losing the fat. But what we really want is a certain beach type look, a cut type look. Okay. So what are we looking at? And when we talk about winter time, and we kind of touch on bulking there, you really, in my opinion, Steve, working the big muscles, the back muscles, the leg muscles, and so on and so forth. But when you're talking about cutting, and you are losing fat because you're using Beligas products, because you're doing your cardio, because your diet's on point, and we will cover those extra options. What you're looking to do is bring out what we call the show muscles. So if I was coaching you, instead of heavy pressing, putting any kind of weight overhead, any variation, you would still be doing something like that to maintain shoulder size, but I want polish. So I want to see those rounded cut delts popping out. You're way more likely to be doing some variation on the lateral raises. What about the stomach? Well, if you were doing some abdominal work just to keep the stomach under control, especially when you're bulking, now we're going to take that up a notch. We're going to be doing planks. We're going to be doing laying on the floor leg raises. I want that stomach flat. And as they used to say in the old bodybuilding magazines back in the day, Steve, I want that washboard six pack. I want to see my abs coming out. Now, if you are getting properly cut, we start to see those little detailed muscles off to the side of the abdominal wall, which is the intercostals, the rib muscles, the serratus, where the back ties in. This is where I would have you doing the little exercises that I wouldn't normally bother with because I train for strength. So I would say, oh, you want to be doing chins and pull downs for back. Now I'm going to get you to do the one arm stuff. Now I'm going to get you to crunch down on the serratus muscles and on the intercostals. Now, these muscles, when they start to pop, Steve, is when you know someone's in shape. And it might be small things like just changing your foot stance on certain leg exercises to get that inner thigh and outer thigh sweep. It might be, for example, you slowing down certain movements, for example, leg extensions, leg curls, and getting you just to angle your feet slightly different to accentuate different heads of the quad muscles. I want to see that little bit. You don't have to be bodybuilder in shape, but just a little tiny detail here and a little tiny detail there. You're going to have things like, as you lose body fat and a little bit of water, more visibility of the base of the quad muscle, which ties into the knee. So you start to get those shape again. I'm more likely to say, listen, motherfucker, I know you slack off on the calves. Now we need to start working calves. So all of these muscles are kind of display muscles and show muscles. You can get some degree of training with the big, heavy compound stuff. But what you're really looking to do is you're presenting a certain look, a certain physique on the beach. Talk about some of the things that you do, Steve, as you said, because you like to stay in shape year round. So give them a couple of little tips for things that you do to keep those muscles popping.
So as I talked about in America, you know, you're anywhere really from even Virginia, even Pennsylvania, even New York, South. It's just nasty during the summer. All the way west, Chicago gets hot during the summer. You know, the West gets hot during the summer. Things have changed in America. It's not like it used to be where it was like a mild, you know, summer. Now it's just fucking hot. So doing outdoor cardio, you got to be creative when it comes to cardio. When I used to be an endurance athlete, so during the summer, what I would do is I would use the treadmill to do long, slow distance, like for like 50 minutes or an hour on the treadmill, just as a moderate pace, or I do like a 1.7 to 2 mile sprint on the treadmill. And really, I would set the treadmill to go for like 12 minutes. And I would just sprint as fast as I can on the treadmill for 12 minutes. And then I'd set it for a cool down. So after the 12 minutes, once I hit that 12-minute mark, I would bust my ass, bust my ass, bust my ass. And then boom, at the 12-minute mark, the treadmill will slow down. So that would be a really good high intensity cardio option. Now, outdoor, very essential that you stay off the treadmill as much as possible because treadmill running is not good for your legs. Okay. You got to think about it. You tend to hill strike on the treadmill. It's just not good form. Okay. So if you want to do outdoors during the summer months, you got to be creative. Now, if you run at night, I'm not a big fan of running at night. Number one, you got the mosquitoes that are out. They will eat you alive. Once you're running outside, the mosquitoes will actually sense you sweating and you struggling, and that makes you even more of a target. So then people say, oh, Steve, I'll just spray myself with a bunch of pesticide. And I say, well, now you're making yourself sick. That's absorbing into your body. We don't want to do that either. So really the best thing you can do is try to run like in the evening. So basically as the sun starts going down, the temperature cools down like 5 or 10 degrees. A rainstorm maybe will come through, especially if you're in the deep south. During the summer, you get rainstorms in the afternoon. That's a great option. If it's a cloudy day, that's a good option. Another option too is in the morning. As soon as the sun
Yeah,
comes up, go
that would
for
be
your,
my preference, Steve. Start
yeah.
the day right.
That would work good. That'd be doubly effective if you're doing fasted cardio. Now, fasted cardio is crucial. Professionals, I don't care if you're a 300-pound pro bodybuilder or you're a skinny runner, it doesn't matter what you are. Fasted cardio works amazingly well because what fasted cardio will do to help you cut is it will force your body to go after the fat stores, okay, to get the energy that you need to do your run. That's just the way our bodies are set up. If you eat a big meal, then go running, first of all, you're probably going to get sick, you're going to get
Yeah,
nauseous, and your body's going to want to throw up what you put in it, but also your body's going to attack those extra glycogen that you just put in your body. So that doesn't really make any sense. What you want to do is make sure you do it faster. So the mornings are the most optimal time to go for a little jog. And it's a good
yeah.
thing because you can wake up, go to the bathroom, drink a little water, and then just go get it out of the way. Even 10, 15 minutes of fasted cardio in the morning is really, really effective. And then you're done and you don't have to worry about it. So that would be a really good option when it comes to that. When it comes to training, look, don't forget stomach vacuums to build up your
Yes.
core. Those are very, very important. I actually forget to do those way too often. But also in your workouts with some uh, ab work. I like to do the decline, get on the decline with a 25 or 35-pound weight and hold on to that and do as many sit-ups as I can to failure. And that's a really good way to strengthen those abs and really get them popping. It's very, very important. Obviously, we got to get rid of that fat that's covering up the muscle so we can see those abs in the first place. So don't be one of those people. I had a client like this yesterday I talked to. They're like, "Oh, I'm in the gym, Steve. I'm committed to go to the gym." I'm like,
Mm.
"Great." I'm like, "What'd you do yesterday?" Say, "I went and did the ab machine." I'm like, "No, no, no, no. You're a 170-pound female. You shouldn't be doing the ab machine. That's not how you build abs. You need to cut the fat. Don't even worry about the ab machine right now. Just you can do sit-ups, that's fine. You can build your core, you do planks, as
Yes,
Mobster
yes,
said.
yes. But you need to be lean.
Yeah.
Doing an hour on an ab machine is not going to make you lean.
No. It's gonna build your it's gonna strengthen your abs, yes. But if it's
Yes,
covered up by
absolutely.
fat, if it's covered
Yeah,
by fat, you're not gonna see it. So that's an important tip to give people. And look, it's about educating people, guys. Like a lot of you listening to this, you already know this. I get it. But if you're
mm,
talking to someone you're trying to help, you gotta educate them. Like it just boggles the mind why people are such assholes to each other out there. Like on the forum, we have a couple guys. I like one guy, he's like an asshole. Every fucking thread, he attacks the person making the thread. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like everybody needs to be educated. And if you're not capable of doing it, then get the fuck out. Get the fuck
do
out
you
the
know what?
forum.
I'd go against that ever so slightly, and I mean only ever so slightly because I recall we used to have one of those gyms that I trained in Peckham. There was one of those twister type of things. You stand on a little platform which moves like a little tiny turntable, and there's a handle. And the idea was that you held the handles one with each hand, and you turned your lower body. And the idea was this would tighten up your core. And I would train in that gym on a regular basis. And there was a fella there, a little bit out of shape, and I never saw him do anything else. And he would be doing that when I got there, and he'd be doing that when I left. And the only issue, bear in mind, listener, you are, of course, listening to this podcast, so you are getting educated, you are doing research, you are looking for answers, is I get the impression every so often, and there's a couple of people on the forums that spring to mind, where they don't ask for help in the gym. They haven't. I'll do this, and I can say that I'm going to the gym, but motherfucker, you've done an hour on that thing, and you look the same for the last 4 years that I've been coming here. What the fuck's going on? Something else, which is well, Steve, and you've touched upon it in terms of some of the things you've talked about. The late Rich Piana was doing this whole business of getting into shape, and he did a series of videos where he would spend 15 minutes every night just before bed with his then partner of whatever her name is, Sarah, and he was doing vacuums in the hallway outside the bedroom. And the camera was set up across the landing there for him to take videos. And he was doing 15 minutes of vacuums. And of course, over time, your stomach, in his case, will become trained to be in that vacuum type position. Perhaps not a full vacuum, but certainly staying tight the whole day. You've even got things like waist trainers, but ultimately, an hour on an ab machine will not burn fat. You just create a toned muscular core underneath the fat. And what we're looking to do to get into shape is take that fat away. Something else, just on the cardio again, Steve, and I actually wrote, why not go canoeing in a lake? as a way of keeping cool, but again, early in the morning, HIIT. So the high intensity interval training arguably works better than the constant stuff. So what would the difference? Let's use the running machine again. And Steve touched upon this, which is why I made the comment. So the running as fast as you possibly can, or very, very close to as fast as you possibly can. So let's say 90% of your VO2 max for 5 minutes, and then walking or slowing the running pace right down to about 60% of your VO2 max, literally just long enough for your heart and lungs to recover from the high interval stuff, the high intensity stuff you've just done. And as soon as you recover, go back again. And 3 or 4 cycles that way, about 25 minutes to half an hour, Steve, of the HIIT type training is probably more effective than you running flat out, but only being able to run flat out at 90%, 100% of your VO2 max for 10 minutes, because you are keeping the heart at a certain level for longer, over the half an hour, if not consistently. The constant stuff is only, you're just literally going to get up against the wall, and that's as much as you're going to be able to do, versus speeding up and slowing down means you're going to be doing more work over the same period of time. And there's another thing which is great for cardio, the early morning stuff that we talked about, and I'll prefer this again over the evenings. Literally, there's an argument to be made. This applies to weightlifting type exercises as well as cardio, and that is that you speed your metabolism up for about 4 hours above the baseline. So if the baseline is 100, and you do half-hour HIIT training in the morning, fasted cardio, like Steve said, whatever, for 30 minutes, your baseline is stimulated. You're now above the baseline for typically up to 4 hours. The same, like I said earlier on, applies to the gym type, the weightlifting stuff, but obviously in the cardio stuff, we're using a much higher likelihood of burning fat versus a lower intensity. It's not as easy to burn fat with weightlifting as it is with cardio. That's just the reality. We can't do it that way. No one gets into shape curling a barbell and loses fat off the waist in the same way that they do if they do interval training or fasted cardio, etc., etc. But there is a baseline stimulation. There is a metabolic stimulation. It's the same as if you went and did a hard laboring job, and you're just elevating your body temperature ever so slightly and your metabolic rate ever so slightly, and that's where we're looking to get you into the fat burning zone. Again, don't expect miracles, and one more tip on this, Steve, and this applies to dieting, cutting, training, whatever else. Give yourself time. Do not, and I have seen this, and I have said this on show, Steve, do not be that person that leaves it to between 2 and 4 weeks before the holiday, before the reason you're getting into shape for. Give yourself time. This is just to get used to the diet, to get used to the cardio, to literally get fit, to learn what works for you, to try out different methods and methodologies that we're talking about, and use some of those tips and say, listen, well, I couldn't get on with that PED. I don't like this kind of cardio. I don't want you to be doing that when you've only got 2 weeks, 4 weeks. I was going to say, Steve, really 8 to 12 weeks. Really, I think actually 10 weeks is perfect. For most people, you're not looking to get into shape for a bodybuilding competition, which typically easily 12 to 16 weeks for the really big long competition cycles and training protocols, but you are looking to get into shape for a holiday. So it might just mean cleaning up the diet, and we're going to talk about that now. Certainly starting to do some kind of low-level cardio if you don't do it normally, and then obviously building up as you get closer and closer to the holiday. Let's touch upon the diet a little bit. Now, Steve said, and I've agreed with him, fasted cardio, meaning no food at all. Lots of different things, but one of the things you could do, Steve, just on the diet side, and it's literally an option. Pro bodybuilders would do this, and it's one of the tips you can take from a pro bodybuilder. There's a couple of tips, actually. One is don't have crap in the house. Don't order out. Steve and I talk about organic. We talk about fresh fruit and vegetables. Make sure that's what's available. If the food is there, which is good food and great for your diet, and it's right there in front of you, you haven't got to go out and order it. You haven't got, and if, like Steve says, if you're ordering when you come back from work or a hard day studying or whatever else, way more likely to make bad choices. Whereas if you're not hungry when you're ordering food or when you go shopping, you're way more likely to make good choices. There's silly little tips, and I'm going to give you one which is you wouldn't think work, but it'll certainly work over a 10-week protocol. And it's slow down when you're eating. Why? If you've ever watched, and I've seen a few, Steve, of those videos where they do the food challenges are always time restricted, and the actual professional eaters will tell you that the more food you can put in before the body says, I'm full up, the more food you'll be able to put away and more likely to beat the challenge. Now, if they ate slowly, they would never beat the challenge. Literally, they have to eat fast. And it's because there's an inbuilt mechanism in your body that says, you eat one more mouthful, motherfucker, you're going to spew. But it literally takes 15 to 20 minutes. I literally saw a professional eater that had failed a challenge because he didn't eat the last few chips. It was huge, great fried steaks and chips and God knows what else. And it got 100 pounds if he'd eaten it all, and he couldn't eat the last bit. He says, because I got to that wall, I got to that place. So if you slow down, you're less likely to overindulge, taking time to eat and chew and savor rather than I'm starving hungry and I'm just going to put as much food away as I possibly can. So silly little things like that. Another one, which is again kind of obvious, and especially in the hotter places that Steve's already mentioned, hydrate. And so, for example, you're hungry for a snack, drink a glass of water. And for at least 25 minutes to half an hour after that glass of water, that's in your stomach. And there's a sensation of being mildly full because you've drunk more liquid, especially where it's warm when you're going to need hydrating anyway, and less likely to then want to add food to that. It's just a weird thing about the body having, like, again, inbuilt mechanisms. So the sensation of being slightly full because you've had a bit more water with 0 calories is going to be better for you versus going and buying some crappy snack or protein bar or something silly that you shouldn't really be eating. It's not a meal, but it's just enough, but it's not the right kind of food and so on. And they're just silly things like this, Steve, having fruit with you in your car when you're driving or in your desk drawer rather than filling up on muffins or stopping off at some fast food place and buying crap that you shouldn't be eating. And it's just a healthier options and stuff like that. What about you again, Steve? Purely and simply because I know obviously being in shape year round is important to you.
So I made some notes on the pre-show, and there's a few things that you can do right now to get yourself cut for the summer, and really keep yourself cut for the year. So first off, things in boxes, junk food in your house, go through your pantry, go through your freezer, and just get rid of them. Go donate them to the local food bank. When you're eating whole quality foods, a really good tip is if you can put something out on your counter and it stays good for weeks or days even, then it's probably not going to be good for you, right? So, if you put a piece of fruit or a vegetable on your counter, it's probably going to last, 4, 5, 6 days, and then it's probably going to go bad. Same thing with, you know, um, anything, any whole food option, right? So, but if you put like a Twinkie on your counter, it'll go months without going bad. You see, it's about making smart food choices, guys and gals out there, and that's what it is. And restaurant food is never going to be healthy. Fast food is never going to be healthy. There are healthier, or I'll say less not healthy restaurants to go to, but at the end of the day, they add a lot of crap to the food, and they cook the food in a manner, they prep the food in these oils that are really not good for you. So it's important to prep your own food so you know what you're putting in your foods, guys. And it's important when you're cooking to choose the right oils. I use unrefined cold processed coconut oil. That's going to be the best thing to cook with. I don't trust olive oil because legally 50% of that olive oil can be another oil. These vegetable oils, canola oil, these spray-on oils that I see people using, it's 0 calories. These spray-on oils doesn't mean anything if it's 0 calories. It's the additives that are killing you. All right, it's the additives that are throwing your brain off. Okay, as Mobster was saying about eating slow, it's a perfect example. These additives actually make you more hungry and throw your brain
Yes.
off, so your brain doesn't even know that it's full. So we got to avoid that stuff. So you got to know what you're putting in your body. It's very, very important.
Let
So
me touch
food,
on one extra thing, Steve. You just reminded me, and it's actually one of those legal loopholes when it comes to certain fats. And they've even used this in the supplement industry when they used to call that 0 carb something or other, Steve. So, for example, on the spray fat, the reason why it's quote unquote 0 calories is because you're using such a small amount and you're spraying it in, you're not dripping it out of a bottle or spooning it in. So you're using such a small amount that the amount of calories in it doesn't amount to 1 calorie. But in reality, there's no such thing, with the possible exception of water, that has no calories. Not that we're out there eating rocks or trees or whatever else, but everything has a calorific amount. So there's the legal loopholes that they use on certain foods, saying, "Oh, it's got this kind of carb in, but the carb's not easily absorbed into your body." So they should do that with like alcohol-based absorbers and God knows what else in sports supplements. So be careful and take a little bit of time, 5 minutes, to learn sometimes what the label actually says versus what it means. And then, like Steve said, with the fast food stuff, there are healthier options, but that's healthier than the normal option versus actually being fully healthy. It just means it's less fatty, less sugar, less preservatives, but it's still got fat, still got sugar, and it's still got preservatives in. It's just a better option than, for example, the full-blown quarter pound or
Yeah.
whatever that you
So
would normally have.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point for sure, buddy. So that's why it's even important. Look, food prepping, you come on the forum and look at the logs.
Yes,
Look at the
yes,
guys who have been most
yes,
successful over the
yes.
past year, 6 months. They food prep. So you take the containers, 6 containers, you put them. You make your chicken, you make your rice, you make your vegetables. Boom, you put them in each container. Now you have food for the next 2 or 3 days. That's how smart people do it. And it's about eating clean. It's about eating smart. So really, it's about it's about getting creative. YouTube videos are great for looking up recipes, how to cook chicken, how to cook fish, how to cook all of stuff. I'm always going on there and I'm learning new recipes. So that's very, very important. And all that stuff. So definitely it's important. Fasting, time restricted eating. Now it depends what you're running. Some of the Belagas things that we're going to get into in the next section, things like
Yes.
trenbolone, you're not going to be able to fast on trenbolone. Trenbolone is such a tremendous nutrient partitioner in the body that if you try to fast or time restricted eat on trenbolone, it's going to cause a lot of side effects, the fatigue, the energy issues. You'll notice the night sweats will be more intense. You'll wake up in the middle of the night in a pool of sweat and dehydrated. So it's very important when it comes to, depending on what you're using to cut, you're going to want to, you may not be able to do time restricted eating. So the more mild steroids that we're going to talk about, the Primos, the Anavars,
Yes.
some of these that don't increase appetite, don't mess with your insulin sensitivity as much, stuff like that. Those are the big ones you're going to be able to do fasting and time restricted eating. But time restricted eating simply means you're eating in a window, whether it be a 2 hour window, a 4 hour window. We talk about Mike Rashid on a podcast. You guys can
Yeah.
check that out. He follows the 1 meal a day OMAD diet or zero
Yeah.
MAD diet, whatever you want to call it, where he eats
Yeah.
1 meal a day. So he's basically fasting 23 hours, then spends 1 hour eating, and then fasts another 23 hours. So that's his strategy. So there's different strategies to it. I follow a 4 to 6 hour eating window. So every day I'm fasting somewhere between 20 and 18 hours. And then I'll eat a meal. I'll eat my 2 or 3 meals within that 2 to 5 hour window, something like that. And then I'll go ahead and fast again, and I'll always usually make sure that I'm fasted when I go do my training. This way, the body has to use energy, the fat on my body as energy to be more likely to do that. And usually you'll hit ketosis once you do this for a certain amount of time. Usually you'll hit ketosis within 15 hours or even less, or 14 hours. But if you've been eating poorly for years, it's going to take you longer to hit ketosis. It may even take you 24 hours to hit ketosis. But I promise you, the more you do it, the quicker you'll hit ketosis. So you'll be able to start excreting as waste actual fat cells as ketones in your body if you're following time restricted eating. And then you could throw in some longer fast, a 24-hour fast, a 36-hour fast, a 48-hour fast here and there. Keep in mind, during the summer, it is going to be harder to fast if you're in America for most of you, because when you're fasting, you're excreting more than you're bringing in. So you're going to have an electrolyte imbalance and you're going to be more dehydrated. So that's normal. So summer fasting is going to be harder, especially prolonged fasted, not time restricted eating. I'm talking about prolonged fasting. So you want to make sure you're staying hydrated, and you want to make sure you save your prolonged fasting for the cooler months. I don't do long fasts during the summer for that reason. I'll do maybe a 48-hour, but I won't do anything longer than that because I don't want to dehydrate myself in the heat. All right, Mobster, so let's get into our favorite Belagas cutting option stacks. Do you want to start us off with the first one?
Yeah, look, I said this to Stephen in the pre-show, and I certainly said this on the last one. I made a point of going through all the options that's available on the Beligas product line just before the show, and I was like, there was too many, Steve. There were so many. So I'm going to give you a few options, but I mean, they're literally, guys, you can come on there, and I will say, just to give you an idea, they do options where they're varying the amounts per milligram. So you, even if we said, oh, for example, Steve, you could do a testosterone EQ, and of course they have those. They've even got blends of those. They also do a variable amount. So one product might be 200, something else might be 400 or 500, and so on and so forth. So make sure you check out the beligas.org website, and obviously then off to one of their resellers to see what's available and what's going to work for you. But just let me give you an example here, Steve. So, for example, they've got a product called Quant, Quant Equipoise, which is 300 milligrams. And I could switch that with, say, for example, here, Steve, one of their testosterone options. So, for example, they've got something called Supro Test 250. I would probably actually do the ratio here, where I would up the amount of testosterone. It doesn't have to be that much in advance. But for example, let's go a little bit higher than normal, but use something like Supro Test twice a week. So that would be 500 milligrams, but keep the Quant EQ at the 300 milligram option. So that's just one way of doing that. And again, 8, 10, 11, 12 weeks, especially that kind of thing. They got, just as an example here, Steve, a Quant Equipoise, 500 milligrams. So the list you can see right there, as I said earlier on, no matter what Steve and I are saying here, there will be an option almost certainly, because I literally didn't end up writing everything down, Steve, where they do a lower amount per milligram and a higher amount. And in fact, in a couple of examples, there was 3 different options for just the one product. Come back with another one of yourself, Steve, just so we got that and we'll go back and forth on this.
Yeah, and one of the ones that I really like is they have a really good, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. They have a really good Winstrol suspension, and it comes in a 50 milligram per milliliter. Now, the good thing about the Winstrol suspension is you could simply drink it. You don't have to inject it. So the suspension comes, and it's like right there. So I like it better than the tablets because a lot of times the tablets have fillers in them with a lot of situations, and it's less. I feel like the suspension where you just drink it, it's easier on your stomach. And I've done this before myself with Winstrol, but it makes it an amazing cutter. So let's say you set a date, like, by July 4th, I want to be able to go to the beach and really be ripped. So what you could do with the Winstrol, you can start it 4 weeks ahead of time, and it will rip you up, Mobster, to shreds.
Mm.
And if you've got like a 4-week timeline, you could just start taking it daily for 4 weeks at 50 milligrams a day. I'm telling you, it will shred you up like nothing else. And you can even do 25 milligrams. I actually like 25 milligrams. So most of you out there were like 50. I get great results on 25 milligrams. So this is an option. The pumps, when you go work out, high repetition training, summer workouts in a sweat, and you're getting these crazy pumps and your vascularity is popping out of your system. That is a great, great one to use. And you can add it to any cycle, or you can use it by itself. Or if you're using a cycle, even the one that just Mobster just mentioned with Equipoise and Test, you just throw in the Winstrol at the end. It will shred you to shreds. What else you got, buddy?
I mean, look, they've got some blends here, Stephen. In fact, going back to the one I talked about before, they even do a test EQ blend, which is 200 milligrams of test enanthate and 200 milligrams of Bolderon undecanate. So 200 of each, and that'll be, again, maybe a mil and a half to 2 mil a week of that particular one. But let me give you a blend here, for example. They do a test Tren long, and well, Steve touched upon Tren earlier on, and obviously that might have an impact on your dieting options, but Tren is probably the #1 recomposition PED of choice. And when we talk about recomposition, we explain it thus. There's this great idea that you can, quote unquote, build muscle and lose fat at the same time. And typically we would prefer you to do one over another. But with Tren, that kind of throws that argument a little bit out the window. It doesn't turn you from a fat motherfucker into a thin one, but it turns someone who's carrying a little bit of body fat into a smaller one. So, for example, here, Steve, let me give you one of their test Tren Bolderon options, which is 400 milligrams total, and it's test enanthate 150 milligrams, Boulder and Decanate 150 milligrams, and Tren enanthate 100 milligrams. Now, again, for me, with that, Boulder here looking to harden you up, Tren for the recomposition, and of course, good old standby testosterone, the 400 milligram option meat, and they do other versions of this. 1.5 mil a week against Steve, maybe pushing it up to the 800 milligram, which would be 2 mil a week. The only issue here is the issues with Tren as usual, and it's relatively low. It's lower than the other two, so there's an argument to be made for that being perfectly useful in that particular regards, because you'd be getting 200 milligrams total per week out of that particular product. Again, for Master, and Steve and I have had a recent back and forth on this in terms of the options for you, etc., etc. The testosterone enanthate, short to medium-ish, medium-long actually. Esters, great. In fact, all the options here
Yeah,
are.
let me talk about that, because I was going to talk about that next. Tren and Masteron. I think it's a great stack. And you know, our friend Monstro, rest in peace, who passed away. I think you guys who follow on the forums know that was his favorite stack. And the reason it was his favorite stack is Tren and Masteron go together like peanut butter and jelly. That is the absolute best stack together. And you can recomp and cut on that stack, especially if you're a good responder to Tren. And I'll tell you, and I'll explain this. What happens is when you use Masteron, it's a DHT derivative, and it binds to SHBG really good. So it makes the Tren doubly or triply more effective. But it also, because of the hardening effects, the Masteron will harden you up, as the Tren is really kind of acting like a sponge in your muscles and absorbing. So eat really good on this. I would do a nice 4 meals a day clean food on this type of stack. And I would try to do like a 10 or 12-hour window of eating. You can't do time restricted eating on Tren. Remember I talked about earlier, but this one would be really good for recomping. And those of you who are really good responders to Tren can really absolutely shred on it. The one negative about Tren during the summer is going to be that Tren makes you just feel hot all the time. And during the summer, make sure your air conditioner is running good. Make sure you have a fan in your bedroom.
Yes.
Point it at your body. Don't point it at your face, because it'll dry out your sinuses, but point it at your body. Get like a quiet dual current fan. You can buy them off of Amazon. They're not that expensive. And it's a really, really good investment. And point it at your body while you're sleeping, and I'll keep your body cool. Or you can get even a ceiling fan if that works for you. And you know, you got to keep yourself cool. Sleep naked if necessary, because what's going to happen on Tren is the night sweats are going to be brutal during the summer. Those hot summer nights where the temperature doesn't even get below 70 degrees, you know, you're going to get really, really hot and really dehydrated quick. So I feel for you guys in the deep south, or even in the desert west. You know, if you live in Arizona or Vegas or something, it gets hot during the summer, Mobster. We're talking at night, it may not even get under 80 degrees or 85 degrees on some nights. So
it's horrible.
Yeah, it's so running Tren is dangerous in that situation. You want to make sure you hydrate.
Steve and I touched upon this when we did a recent Beligas show. I said what they've done is they've given you the options of putting cycles together yourself, or buying a blended product, which is perfect for cutting, perfect for bulking. And one of the things that blew Steve and I away was a variety of options. But for example, just on the product I've just talked about, you go, okay, so what would we run? And if we put a cycle together, 800 milligrams a week, absolutely perfect. It's under a gram. They've done the work for you. They've kept the Tren low. They're giving you that there because they know that it works. They know that the Masteron's going to harden you up. They know that the great testosterone base works for an enormous amount of people. You ain't got to inject multiple times a week, maybe once, maybe twice a week on this particular stack if you want to. You could do 2 mil in one shot with this one, Steve, because the esters are long enough that you could only do 1 jab a week of 2 mil, or 1 mil injections in a day, and that's it for the rest of the week if you want to. So yeah, talk about dosing from your own perspective as well, Steve.
So with the Tren, listen, the Tren can range from anywhere from 150 milligrams a week at the low end. People go as high as 350 or 400 on the high end. Some guys go even higher. So for the summer, keep the Tren a little lower. So I would kind of go in the middle, 200, 250 milligrams a week of the Tren. And Beligas has you covered. All kinds of Tren options, the ACE, the E, the blends, you know, the mixtures, all this. So if you want to go the Tren route, That's an option. If you don't want to go the trend route, you want to go the more mild route. You're like, Steve, I don't want to be wake up middle night in the sweat. I don't want to be fatigued all day. I don't want to be dehydrated all day. You don't have to. Go with the Primo. Belagas has excellent Primo. We're blessed. We're blessed because back in the day, I used to spend $1,200 on a Primo cycle, and it wasn't even good quality Primo. That's what I had to do. Now, Belagas, you can get it for a fraction of that price. You can get a cycle. 12 weeks of Primo, 400 to 600 milligrams a week is plenty of Primo. And you can stack a little testosterone with it. Keep the cycle simple. And you know what else I would do, Monster? Add in the Anavar, the Belagas Anavar to that stack.
Yes, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
Steve, there's a
So
couple of
for
oral options.
yeah,
Yeah, I
so
would have gone.
for
Yeah,
go 40 milligrams on the Anavar. Either you can kickstart it, but I prefer to do a finisher. The last 6 weeks, do the Anavar about 40 to 50 milligrams a day, and you'll get really good cutting properties. So that's a really good mild option, and it won't mess with your sleep, and it won't give you night sweats and those types of side effects. So I keep the testosterone 200 milligrams or less, and keep the Primo somewhere around 400 or 500 milligrams a week. Anything else, Mobster?
yeah. Let me touch on one, Steve, and I'm going to throw in the sort of that Masteron-ish tip that you and I have talked about recently. So, for example, they do something called testosterone, 300 milligrams. So I would probably take that up towards 450, 500 milligrams a week. I would use the Anavar, exactly as Steve just said, because they do both a 10 and a 50 milligram option. So, for example, here, 30 milligrams a day of the Anavar. And then a couple of different ways of looking at things. So I've got the Provaron, 20 milligrams. One of those per day works a similar way, but actually slightly better than Masteron at the attaching to the SHBG and freeing up more free testosterone, which we absolutely love, which makes the cycle more effective, which is another great advantage that we don't have to write high dosages and not use Provaron versus using a lower dosage of the testosterone, etc., but getting more out of it. They've got a T-bowl option here, Steve. When we talk about cardio and conditioning, they've got a 10 milligram option here. So, for example, anybody with 10, 20, maybe 30 milligrams a day, again with the testosterone, run at the amounts I've already described, but being able to do more cardio, better cardio, because that specifically was about athleticism. And that, in our example, meaning would you be able to do more cardio? And then something that I'm not overly keen on, but they do have options here. And ironically, just talking to someone up Thursday to be on the counter at the gym, Glenn, 40 micrograms, starting at 40, working your way at 120. Again, as Steve's just said, with the options that he was talking about, I would prefer this at the end of the cycle, just to bring you down to those last few bits and pieces, the fact that you want to get rid of, making a cycle more effective, but not having you on Clen for too long of a time, Steve. I know that you've talked about the way that Clen can be run. So just give the listeners the few, several days on, a couple of days off option
So
that I know we discussed.
Clen can get downright dangerous during the summer. So if you're going to be at the beach a lot, you don't want to be on Clen because you can get really dehydrated and your heart rate can really speed up on it. So be careful if you do decide to do the Clen. But with the Clen, you want to start out at 40 micrograms and gradually over the next few days increase it by 20 micrograms to 60 to 80 to 100 to 120 to 140 max per week. A lot of pros that run 120 or 140. So unfortunately with Clen, you've got to run it to get side effects to get it to be effective. So I'm not a big fan of Clen. A lot of you aren't going to be good responders to Clen, but some of you are going to really get good results on Clen. We've seen some really good transformations. So it's one of those that you've got to know that you're going to do well on it before you decide to run it during the summer. So run it not during the hotter months to see how you react to it first. And if you react to it okay, then you can try it during the summer months. So I think those are good. I think we went over a lot, Mobster. So why don't you touch on why Belagas is so popular?
So the previous show that Steve and I did, we lacked a certain degree of familiarity that perhaps we should have had with Beligas. So what do? We go away and we look and we see who are Beligas, what are they about, what's their history, why do we think they're a good source? Well, we know that they're a good source, but let's start with the history a little tiny bit. They're a Belgian company. And in Belgium, they are an actual pharmaceutical company. They've been around a long time. Now, obviously, at some point, they've decided to focus in the PED market, and that's where we come to them. They have an enormous amount of options, way more when we did the previous show, Steve, because we wasn't specifically focusing on cutting. We went away, I was like blown away by the product line. And as I said even earlier on, the simple fact that they go, oh, listen, right? So they do different amounts of standardized drugs, whether it's testosterone at 300, 400, 500 milligrams a milliliter. Then they go, which was something else that completely blew us away. We were like, well, we've never actually heard of this kind of version of it. But then when you looked at it, the blend that they produced, you kind of, it made sense. So like I just said a few minutes ago, you go, okay, so what would be a good single source steroid here with a good oral steroid there, and how would we put that together? But as an example, if we use 2 injectable steroids, how would we run that? What's a great cycle for people to run? Well, hang on, not only do they do these 2 single source steroids, so you can put them together yourself, they also do a blend, which is almost exactly how people would run it. So they've actually put together a bunch of options, and I mean, it's literally page after page, where when you look at the reason why they've created a blend, it makes sense. Oh, that's a specific blend for bulking. It's got exactly the amounts that I would normally run, but I'd have to go and buy those 2 separately, and they've done it for me. Well, then why don't I do the? Why don't I use the one that's pre-prepared? It saves a lot of money. It's 1 injection. It's not 2 injections, Steve. It's got exactly the same sort of ratios that I would run and the milligrams that I would run. What about the other obvious stuff? Obvious is these things like we look at the history of a company and we go, how long has a company been around? We look at the popularity of their products. So we wasn't familiar, but we went away and looked and we suddenly realized, hang on, they are an incredibly popular company. And you get to become a popular company, you become recognized as a brand by literally people using your products and consistently using your products. I asked, just as an aside, Steve, I asked a buddy today, he was going to buy a marmalade, which would he buy? And he says, Robinson's marmalade. I said, why? Because there's loads of options, supermarket brands. It's because you know it tastes exactly how it's going to taste every fucking time for the last 30, 40, 50 years. It's going to be the same goddamn high quality product and it tastes exactly how you think a marmalade, orange marmalade should taste. That's how when we make pharmaceutical choices, Steve, with PEDs, that's precisely what we're looking for. We want to use a product that works, doesn't just work the first time I use it, but the second time, the third time, that the quality control, meaning the milligrams per milliliter, whether I get PIP, post-injection pain, whether someone else has had a great result on cycle, is the same every single time. There are brands, which I will not name, where they were amazing to begin with, and then the quality fell off as the motherfuckers got greedy, or they just got lazy and decided to make an extra buck, or they couldn't be bothered with good quality control. They started great and was sterile, and then the infections went all over the place. You don't get to stay around a long ass time if your quality drops off, if you're underdosed all the time, if people start to get issues with abscesses and whatever else. So you want a company, a pharmaceutical company like Beligas, to have that kind of level of quality control, that every single product is sterile, that you go away and you search for the Beligas on a forum and you say, hang on, there are half a dozen people on this forum right now with logs who are using Beligas products. Let me look at their log. Oh, well, he's dead. He's getting, look at that picture at the beginning. Look at the picture and he's only halfway through the cycle. His abs are popping, his quads are coming out, his delts are popping out. He's starting to get into shape. Yes, his cardio and his diet's on point, but look at the great results he's getting with Beligas. And one of the things that Steve and I touch upon constantly with this stuff, whether it's the appearance of the box, whether it's the appearance of the vial, and why do I talk about the box and the vial like it's a big deal? Because realistically, the box shouldn't make any difference to the product inside. But the time and effort that a company's put into making sure that a product looks right, that's got proper batch numbers, got proper lot numbers, isn't pre-printed, uses holograms on certain things, that the caps don't look wonky, that if I take a vial out of a box and hold it up to the light, there are no floaters in. These kind of things on a regular basis, done again and again and again for years at a time, makes you confident that this is a pharmaceutical company producing pharmaceutical grade products. And again, like I said, Steve, you and I know the horror stories going back in the day. The last one, and I'll touch upon this before I bring Steve in, is customer feedback and testing. So the one story that we tell on a constant basis, especially recently, Steve, as you know, is both what we call in-house, independent, and then truly independent testing. In-house is where a company tests their own products, and they should do that just to make sure that the staff downstairs are doing their job. Quality control comes in, takes a product off the line, takes it to the lab in-house, and test it. Does it have the right milligrams per milliliter? Is the oil consistency good? Is the cap put on properly? Is the seal inside the rubber bung? There's no gaps. There's no way that anything can get in there. Are the people downstairs on point of doing their job? Now, the second option is you take that same product, randomly taken from the product line, and you send it to a lab outside. There's not paid staff of yours that might be working in conjunction with some lazy motherfucker downstairs on the production line. No, it goes off to a lab where you're paying him to check that the product is exactly what it needs to be. You don't have to tell him motherfucker if you don't want to, but it's better for you as a company owner to see that your production team, you see that your quality control team are doing their job properly. You're paying them big money and they are producing a solid product that's going to go out to the customer, because it doesn't take much to ruin your reputation. And the last one is what we call truly independent. And we've had this, so we've touched upon this on recent shows. When we talk about approved sources, so we say a member of the forum, and it's not just the one because it's happened more than once, but the story most recently remains the same. A member of the forum buys 10 products from 10 different approved sources, and he takes something that's cost him $1,000, maybe less, with shipping $1,000, and he sends them off for another couple of $1,000, certainly the higher end of $1,000 plus, for testing of each product that is brought. And it's different brands from different sources. It might be 1 or 2 brands from one place, a singular brand which is particular to that source from another place, and so on and so forth. But it's 10 products. Let's not all test this cypionate. It's not all testing amphate. It's different things from different places. From kind of almost random, Steve. Perhaps it'll make part of some future cycle that probably just wants, and this individual tells you, because you can come onto the forums and check, that I wanted to catch at least, in my mind, I was going to have 2 products fail. Let's say Beligas is on that list. I can't remember the list, Steve, but I know that he did this. This truly independent tested. None of the products that we talked about on these shows, none of them were fouled. Every single thing was within the 5% margin, and he was blown away by the quality, consistency, etc. of the products. Talk about that, Steve, before we go into the disclaimer.
Yeah, and it follows up to what you just said. When I order gear, I want to know that if I order Anavar, I'm getting Anavar. If I'm ordering testosterone 250, then I'm getting testosterone 250. I don't want gear that's underdosed. I don't want gear that's fake. I don't want gear that's something else. So Beligas provides that. And I've been using Beligas myself for a few years, and they're an excellent brand. And I know that I'm getting good quality when I use them. I've always had great results on them. And also their shipping is lightning fast. And that's I don't need it to be super fast. I don't need it to be Amazon, but it needs to be efficient. Like if I place an order, I want to see progress. A few days later, I want to see a tracking number. I want to see it, getting moved in the post office,
Yes.
So I don't want a source I order from and then they just disappear for 2-3 weeks. You never hear from them. And then you have to message them over and over to finally get them to ship your product. That's not customer service. So Beligas provides that. They're a professional company and they're an excellent brand. So definitely check them out, guys, and come on the forums and post your touchdowns. We'd love to hear it.
Right, listeners, before we go, just the last couple of thoughts. And if you want to be consistent in your training and consistent in your diet and making sure that your cycle's on point, keep that in mind when you decide. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy, but as often as not, especially in the last part, it's hard. Take a picture of yourself from last summer, stick it up on the fridge. Take a picture of yourself now, put it there at the beginning. And as go online with our forums, put some log info up, take pictures as you go. We'll tell you if you're making progress. If there's times when you're struggling, we'll try to inspire you. You put pictures up of your food because it keeps you on point. And we like to see what you're eating, just for entertainment purposes. But we can see that you're eating clean. We can see that there are healthy options. Some people struggle with this idea of putting that kind of stuff together. We will help. We will help you. The forum members will help you. We'll help you with cardio. We'll help you with training. We'll help you with diet. And obviously with Beligas products as part of that mix in your summer cutter, then the success, if not guaranteed, is as near as, damn it, Steve, because it ultimately comes down to the effort that you're putting in. It's super important, but we want to support you on that particular journey. Let us know what you think about the products. Let us know what you think about our options and the cutting options. Have you got some diet, cardio, or training suggestions of your own that you can include to let the listeners know? Post them below. Come onto the forums and let us know. Please note, we are not doctors and opinions are ours. It's our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. A podcast of informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.